Oh my God, Rachel, you and I have known each other for a while. We have been definitely in each other's lives through many ups and many downs. And I am just so excited. When I was thinking about the topic of trauma and healing and values led leadership and overcoming challenges and facing demons, and you're someone who so openly writes about that and shares about that. And you're a female founder and you have a strong religious background and you have had a lot of personal challenges, but you show up bright and shiny and empowering and inspiring. And it's just, you're like such a legend to me. And so when I thought about who I want to have on the podcast, I'm like, oh my God, there is hands down, I want Rachel on the podcast. And because what I am obsessed with, as you know, as having been in the agency world for now 11 years, me coming back from the cancer journey, my manager telling me she doesn't need me anymore. And I was then had the freedom to start leaning into my passion project, which is mental health, trauma healing, root cause healing, for female founders and kind of quote unquote healing those blocks that get in the way of our goals that we don't even know are there. I just feel it's such an important message because I feel so many women in business, and I don't know if you agree with this, but the message is generally tactics and sales strategy and pricing or building your team or marketing. And it's like, but it doesn't really consider in a lot of conversations that inner game piece, right? That, okay, I hate the term self-sabotage, but I hate it so much. But that idea of we are our own worst enemy, right? We don't achieve what we want because it's our stuff, right? So I just can't wait to talk to you about that. So I'm just going to quickly let me just introduce you to the crew, and then we'll get started. So Rachel Honeyman is the founder of Honey Be Bold, a marketing agency that amplifies the impact of purpose-driven female founders through bold human. She supports women at every stage of business with done for you and done with you options, meeting women on a mission exactly where they are. Oh my God, I love that so much. So
Thank
tell
you.
me, I remember when you and I think I first connected, you were kind of in this crossroad of you were like, do I shut it down or do I just lay on the gas and fix it? And so when you started, tell us about that. Tell us about your starting story. Grief, things were going on. Take us through it.
Yeah. Oh boy. Yeah. I kind of have to back up. My husband and I went through over 5 years of infertility treatments, surgeries, IVF, miscarriages, everything you can imagine. At every step along the way, my mental health was just eroded further and further and further. And when it became very clear about almost exactly 4 years ago, we got confirmation from our doctor this is not happening. There's no possibility in the universe that this is going to happen. We had problems on both sides there, and it wasn't happening. We decided to officially stop our journey toward becoming parents. It was a very, very hard decision, very conscious decision. And I, both for me and my husband, this acknowledgement that my mental health and therefore my life was really at risk if we continued down any other path. And we made that decision, and I wound up going into the deepest, darkest place I have ever been in. And I've struggled with depression on and off for my whole life. I remember using that term first when I was 13, but it might have started even earlier than that. But I go through depressive episodes, and I'm no stranger to that. But the place that I was in after coming to this decision, which was the right decision, it was the only possible decision for us. Even though it was right, it still had it was just this tremendous loss. And I had so much grief, and I just felt I had lost myself. I'd lost this part of myself and this dream. And as a type A perfectionist that I'm sure many people listening can relate to, the idea of putting effort into something and not achieving it is, my God, I felt a failure, even though it doesn't logically make sense. It brought up all of those feelings. And so I was just in the worst possible place, deeply suicidal. I didn't want to live. My 35th birthday happened around this time, and my husband tried to throw a party for me. And I was, no, I don't want to celebrate being alive. This isn't what I wanted my life to look at 35. And so that's kind of the place that I was in. And that's exactly when I started my business. So my birthday is in October. That's when that happened. And end of November is when I started my business, when I officially went out on my own. So really started in the depths of it, and I started it really for a lot of reasons, and it was something that I'd had in mind for a long time. But at that moment, I felt if I don't do this, if I don't give myself a lifeline that is going to give me some meaning, I don't know that I will make it to 36.
Facing our fears plays in the experience of entrepreneurship.
I think every part of entrepreneurship is scary as shit. I hope I
Yeah.
can I hope I
Yeah. Oh
can
my gosh.
curse.
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
I think every part of it is scary. It's like you're responsible for everything. The buck stops with you. If you have a team, you're responsible for other people. Even if you don't have a team, if you're a solopreneur, there's no stability in it. There's no stability. One decision could tank the whole thing, right? Every part of it is scary. And so I feel with entrepreneurship, it's this constant need to face your fears and just do the hard thing every single day. I would say a dozen times a day, I'm making these little decisions that if I stop and think about it, I'm like, oh shit, what implications could this have? And how terrifying. It's all terrifying.
I know. Right?
Yeah. But I think that that's actually what's beautiful about it is the flip side of it is that if you don't do that, and whether you're an entrepreneur or not, but if you don't like face your fears and do things that are out of your comfort zone, you're gonna live a very small life, and there are limits to how much you can grow as a human. You cannot growth really does come from that place of struggle. That's just the reality.
Yeah. Because for you, what do you find are the things about entrepreneurship that are the most fear-inducing to you?
For me, I would say that it is that feeling of responsibility to my team. I like I really have been very intentional about how I build my team. And I just have to say, thank you for that very kind intro. I have to say that I've said this to people who like we know in common because we know a lot of people in common. I'm like, I often say, I wish I had a bracelet that said, "What would Natasha do?" I have that in my head so often when making decisions in my business because you're just such a badass with everything that
Oh
you
my
do.
god, you're too kind.
But I think that that's really the piece that weighs on me the most is if things are not going the way that I want them to and business isn't growing how I want it to grow, my first thought is I have responsibility to my team. And yes, of course I want to make as much money as I want to make, right? But I really want to be able to pay my people what they deserve. And when I can't do that, it tears me up. It really tears me up.
Yeah, I totally get it. I totally get that. Yeah, there's seasons where things are great, everything is rolling, and everyone's paid, and then there's seasons when it's not quite as easy, and you know that they've got bills to pay, and yeah, it is so hard. It is so hard, especially when you love your team, right? You love them, you wanna take care of them, you wanna show up for them, and it's all on you, right? And it's hard, and especially if you go through seasons, you said if you're not feeling well or you're feeling depressed or your feelings and you still have to show up, that's so hard.
Yeah.
So, I think an important question, and I know this is something that I work on a lot personally, is really coming from a place of living from a place more of my values than my fears driving. So, what does that mean to you? So, internal values led fears versus fears that come from external societal expectations.
Yeah, I think this is where it gets really fun actually because it comes down to really honing in on what's important to you and what is really driving you. And I think that so many people are so out of touch with that and they've never really taken the time to evaluate what is really important to me, what are my values, what are the things that are the non-negotiables. And I will not negotiate on this because this is core to who I am. And so many people just never go through that process. But when you have gone through that process and you're really clear on who you are, and this is a big part of the work that I do with my clients is like always starting with that values led, really getting underneath it and going through that process. And when you're facing fears, because you're going to be facing scary shit all the time, you're better able to evaluate how do I face this from my own values versus is this fear actually coming from external societal expectations, right? What are the things that are being kind of put on me versus coming from within me? And even the ones that are coming from within me, where is that really coming from? What's really driving that? And then I think that just makes it a lot easier to make those scary decisions and to keep going, because it's not just to check someone else's box, right? It's really, there's no other option, right? There's the decision that is in line with my values, and then there's the decision that is not in line with my values, and I know what my values are, so I'm going to go in that direction. And it's hard. It's not it doesn't make it easy, because these decisions can be really hard, but I think that it just makes it a lot it feels better. It feels a lot better.
So can you give me a couple examples of what that looks in real life?
Yeah, so I think that one really good example is if you have someone comes to you and they are interested in hiring you, and you're in a place in your business where you feel you don't have you can't afford to say no, right? You're in that zone. And that's a really dangerous zone. It's a really dangerous zone, and it's when we start making decisions that really go against our values. And it's the sort of thing where, you could tell, and I've had situations this where I'm just not sure that this is the right fit. What they're looking for is maybe something that it's not my zone of genius. It's not the thing that I'm going to be best at, or it just doesn't feel aligned. This client doesn't feel aligned, all of that. And if I asked someone external who has no real knowledge of the situation, and maybe they know something about business or whatever, they might say, well, if your business is in a place where you can't afford to say no, then you got to take it on and you'll figure it out and just take on the business. And I have turned away business because of that feeling where I'm like, I know this is wrong, and go to my husband. You heard me and my husband on I
Yeah.
brought him on my podcast. We talked a lot
So
about
good.
this kind of building our values. And he's often the person that I go to where I'm like, I need that gut check. I feel unsure about this. And he almost always is like, you know the answer. You know the answer before you came to me.
Thanks for nothing.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that that's a really it's a really common example. Everyone is going to face those situations, and you have to make a judgment call, but you have to really really understand what is aligned with your values and what's not.
What do you think is another societal expectation that is really common, let's say for women specifically?
Well, I think that one of the things that winds up, and we were talking about this kind of offline before, but I think one of the problems that a lot of women run into is that we are kind of expected on a societal level to operate our businesses the way that men do. And so there's this expectation that you're going to sell a certain way and market a certain way and treat your clients a certain way. And I'm not bashing men at all, but I do think that there is a very different female energy versus male energy in how we run our businesses in a very in a way that respects who we are at our core. And there are a lot of these kind of sales tactics that are sold as being the be all and end all. And I speak to a lot of women who feel like they need to do that because that's what works. And in reality, I don't know that that actually works all the First of all, it definitely doesn't work all the time. But I think that for a lot of women, the kind of broy tactics just aren't going to be aligned with your values, and it's not going to lead to the type of business that you actually want to build and that you feel good about, and the clients that you want to work with, and all of that. And so I think that that's a really common one that I see a lot.
Yeah, that's interesting. Because when you work with your clients, I know when you do your content hubs and or your cohorts, and you're so good at helping women find their voice and bring their real self out. That's the one thing I just aspire to be like you. Honestly, if I wish I had a bracelet, that was what would Rachel do. But it's because you're just so bright and you bring so much energy, and the colors and the way that you do your branding and the feathers and the hats, and you're just you can't miss you. Do you know what I mean? Your eye cannot look away when they see the post from Honey Be Bold, right? And in your experience working with other women, I work with women, you work with women. Where do you notice some of the biggest concerns that come up? Like, what are some other big fears that you notice?
Yeah, I mean, I think that you just nailed it on the head with talking about kind of the marketing and branding side of things and the showing up as your full self. That is, I think, the piece that, I mean, all the women that I work with struggle with that. If they didn't, they probably wouldn't come to me.
Yeah.
But I think that it's just so ubiquitous that women just as a whole, obviously generalizations, but like we were really told from society to like tamp down, right? Just quiet it down. Don't be so much. And so there's just a lot of fear around showing up. And when I can show my clients and my students in the cohorts that I run, when I can show them that actually when you lean into who you are, first of all, it's so freeing. It's so, so freeing when you can do that and just feel yourself and you're not masking. It's really exhausting to mask all the
So,
time. It's
yeah.
so exhausting. So it just kind of relieves that pressure, but it also just opens the door for the people who you actually want to work with and the people that you actually want to attract to find you and to, and thank you for saying that about my branding, but it's very intentional. I want people to see me and know who I am. And the people who get it. And the people who don't. And I don't want the people who don't get it. But if I didn't show up as my full in your face, this is me, this is Rachel, take it or leave it. If I didn't show up as that, the people who are drawn to me would never come to me because they wouldn't know that I exist. And so I think that that's a huge one where I just see women quieting their voices or just feeling, even the very idea of showing up on camera, it's really scary for people. And I get it. I get it. It's so scary. But once you do it, it's ripping off a band-aid and who cares? You be yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. No, exactly. I feel that as well. I spent my whole life not being able to create content. And it wasn't until from my story, it was definitely not the ripping off the band-aid. I mean, the ripping off the band-aid, I guess, was going to therapy and figure out why I was so scared, right? I know you and I both talk very openly about mental health and therapy and resources and things like that. So when you are working, if I can ask, this isn't being streamed at this point now, but how do you feel mental health practices, whether it's therapy or fitness or whatever it is, like how do you feel mental health? Where have you, what am I trying to ask you? What mental health practices are your go-tos for you? And what do you feel are like, how would you describe for you the importance of mental health as a female founder?
Yeah. I mean, I think that it's super, super important. Obviously, that's an understatement. I will be super honest that at the moment, I am very much neglecting this because I'm in this very busy season in my business,
Yeah.
which is great. But I'm in the last week or so, especially, I'm noticing that like I've neglected this and I need to get back to it. And I think that is probably the most important thing is just paying attention. Pay attention when things are starting to not feel right or things are just kind of slipping in. For me, everyone has to find their own toolbox, right? Everyone has to find their own toolbox. And I've spoken about this before. I'll just mention it briefly because we could probably do a whole episode about this. What I have used to manage my depression, because I have since that episode where I was deeply suicidal, what pulled me out of it was a treatment called TMS, transcranial magnetic stimulation, which is FDA approved for treatment resistant depression. And basically, you have to demonstrate that you have tried a million different drugs and they haven't worked and all of that. And you're not in the US. In the US, insurance is just a nightmare. So
Yeah.
that piece of it sucks. But the treatment itself, it's basically just like a strong magnet tapping very hard on the skull, and it's stimulating a particular part of the brain. And I can't
Interesting.
totally tell you why it works, but it works really, really well. And I've done it 4 times now, and it has saved my life.
Oh my
For
God.
sure, 2 of those times it saved my life. The other times I think I was just in a depressive episode, not feeling too great, and it helped pull me out of that. But 2 of those times it was truly life saving.
Yeah, because I just think like fear. I know I've been an entrepreneur my entire adult life. And everyone I talk to, all my friends, all my colleagues, all my peers, we're all female founders, all of us. I don't think I know anybody who has a job in my peer group. And it's like one of the biggest things I feel with fear, that external fear, societal fear, that pressure to perform, all of these things. And I feel so many women don't recognize that the fear comes from somewhere, right? The fear isn't just, it's not that you're scared, or it's not, how do I describe what I'm trying to say? It's the fear has a root cause somewhere. I know I mentioned this already and I write about this sometimes on LinkedIn, but people who know me, like or they think I'm an extrovert. They think I'm brave and bold and all these things. And I'm 45 now. It wasn't until 44 that I literally could not create content online. I would hire coaches, and one of them actually gave me my money back because you suck. I can't even work with you. This was no joke. This was 2 years ago. And she's like, you're not ready. I can't work with you. She literally gave me my money back. And I was like, okay. And so I was working with a therapist, and my fear of creating the content, I was physically ill, just the idea of showing up online. And I remember doing a bunch of therapy with that, and it came back to, okay, I grew up with a bipolar parent. So the MO to get through the day is you just shut up, you keep the peace, and you just don't ruffle anybody's feathers, right? You're just shut up. Don't say
Mhm.
anything that's going to piss anybody off. And so once you kind of identify the source of the fear, and then once I recognized, okay, wait a second, I haven't seen my dad in 25 years. Why would this still be bugging me? And all these things, and you can kind of let that go. I feel for so many women, we have so many fears that we never really stop to investigate, right? And I don't know if you can identify with that, but I just feel a lot of women, they blame themselves for, I'm not good at this, or I can't do this, or I'm just bad at that. And you're like, not true. In my opinion, not true. It comes from somewhere. And
Yeah.
I remember there was this book, and I talk about this all the time, but there was this book that was all about female success and self sabotage. And I remember someone recommended it to me, and I started reading it. And even the introduction, I just threw the book across the room. I'm like, this is total bullshit. I can't even, and some people know what book I'm talking about, and I'm not going to say it, but I just literally, I love the author. I thought it was the premise was so good, but I just can't even, for me to say, someone told me one time that self sabotage implies intent. And I don't
Mm.
know in your experience, but your experience as a female, your experience working with women, would you agree with that? That so much fear and quote unquote sabotage is unintentional, unconscious?
Yeah.
What's your take?
I I totally agree with all of that. I think that we have so many hard-coded messages from childhood. Everyone does. Even people who had happy childhoods, you came away with some scars because that's what it is. My husband actually always says you spend the first 20 years of your life, getting problems, and then you spend the rest of your life trying to overcome them.
100%.
And that's absolutely true. And, I think that I hear that a lot, that I'm just bad at marketing, I'm bad at social media, I'm right. And I always push back. There's a mindset piece there that is coming from somewhere much, much deeper. And sometimes you don't know what that deeper thing is. And that's when therapy can be really, really, really helpful to get underneath that. But we have these internal messages. I mean, I will tell you, I grew up with two very, very prominent, powerful messages that, even though I know that they're not true, I'm probably going to be working past them for the rest of my life. And they were that I'm not smart and I'm not funny. And like, bullshit. It's bullshit.
You're so
And
funny.
and I'm a delight. I'm a fucking delight.
You are.
Okay? So, so I think that we don't, and those messages weren't necessarily said explicitly, but they were the messages that I came away from childhood with. And it took a lot of work and a lot of therapy to get to the point where I can show up and be myself, and I can own the gifts that I know that I have, and that I get feedback, right? You also have to look at feedback. That's actually one of the things that I look at all the time is when people say I'm just bad at whatever. The first question I ask is, do you actually have enough evidence to prove
Exactly.
that?
Where's the data for that? Yeah.
Yeah. And people say, I'll pick on the marketing one in particular, the kind of like what you're saying. I just no, yeah, I do. Of course I do. I have paid for all these courses and I haven't been able to do it. And this coach, whatever, right? My answer is no, you actually haven't built a system that works with who you are, clearly, because you haven't been able to do it in a way that feels good to you. And then, until you do that, and realize that you have shortcomings, which we all have shortcomings. We
We
all have
all
things to
do.
learn,
We
right?
all do.
That's what it
Why
is.
we need our teams, right?
Exactly. Until you do that, you don't have enough evidence to back that up. And so where's that coming from? Dig deeper and figure out where
I love
that's
that
coming
so much. I love that so much. And that's going to bring us back to the values conversation. But it's kind of, I agree. I think this is one of the things when you talk about, I think I've sort of built this infamy around team building, right? And because I'm completely out of my agency, I haven't seen a client in a year and a half. I run a 100% virtual contractor team, 99% team retention, and over 10 years. But it's one thing I tell women all the time. And I feel a lot of women have a lot of ego around this. And I think you and I agree, we're both on the same page. But it's, you don't have to be good at everything. build your team around you. This is what I love what you said about your marketing. Because I'm 100% marketing is so much fun when you're doing it your way, right? And this is the thing. This is my biggest pet peeve about personal development, professional development. Because I don't know about you, but I've spent for sure over 100 grand. For sure. Coaches, consultants, cohorts, guaranteed 100 grand. At least
Easily. Yeah.
easily 100 grand over. Yeah, easily 100 grand. And most of the content, I have not implemented it because it is not me at all, at all. And I remember there was this course and it was, I don't know, 30K or something. And it was by this huge high ticket someone, right? And I remember they were like this and all this win and all this and all the thing and all the hype. And unit one was all about Facebook organic social. And I'm like, you gotta be fucking kidding me. I am not a sit on social media and shoot the shit kind of person. I'm just not like that at all. And I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. But this is the way, this is the way, this is the way, this is the way. And I literally I didn't even do the program. I can't drink this Kool-Aid. And I remember someone told me, they're like, it's so brave that you walked away. And I knew I couldn't do it. I know that that's not my style. That's not my vibe. And so to your point, women, I think we're allowed to give ourselves permission to do it our own way. And the way that I do marketing is very different than how you do marketing, but we're different people and we can show up very differently and that's what makes it so beautiful. I don't know about you. People sometimes ask me, they're like, how do I show up different? How do I show up distinctive? I'm like, be your fucking self. Because there's no one like you. So in however many people in this world, 6-7 billion people, you're it. You're the only
Yep.
one. Like
Yep.
you as you is fundamentally unique, right? So anyway, I'm kind of on a tirade, but it's like,
No, but I think if I can like just pick on one piece of that, which is I think that what it's be yourself, but you have to know who you are and don't I think that here's another fear that people have is actually taking off the mask and actually sharing the parts of themselves that are not so pretty. And that's I think something that you and I both do, right?
shadow.
We are just very much this is who I am and I'm
Yeah.
going through a hard time or I
This is
went through some shit and this is not pretty. My fertility story is, I
mm,
think, a really good example of like, it's not tied up with a neat bow. I didn't have the happy ending. That story is over without a happy ending, and people cannot handle that. And I have gotten some people who are like, I can't believe you're talking about this, and I'm like, why
mm,
would I not talk about this? This is who I am, and that's how you build. People ask me all the time, how do I build a personal brand? You need to get in touch with who you are. You need to get in touch with the stories that only you have. You have stories that have shaped who you are, and you need to take some time to really, you know, get in touch with them because that's what's going to help you stand out.
totally. Yeah. Owning that shadow side, I think, yeah, you and I both really do that very unapologetically because it's like, I always feel, I don't know about you, but I always feel everyone has that, I like to see the shadow side. And I don't even like the word shadow because it implies dark. And I don't think it's dark. I just think it's just part of the story, right? But we
Mhm.
have this part that we might not want to talk about. But I feel as women, us sharing our journey, the highs and the lows, it opens the conversation for more women to show up and share that story, right? And I just feel because I'm the same. I'll write about breast cancer, and we wrote that post about your brother, and we talk about these really taboo, loaded subjects, right? Cancer, and I have a special needs daughter, and divorce, and you talk about mental health, and you talk about fertility, and you talked about your brother, and all these like really loaded, taboo subjects, right? But I feel that just paves the way for other women to be braver. And I
Yeah.
think as we all do that, what the holy shit? It just excites me to think women using their voices, shinier, brighter, lighter. I'm like, oh my God, there's so much healing there. I know for me, I don't know about you, but and then we'll get back onto the subject. I just love talking to you about this. But I know whenever I write about breast cancer, something about having had breast cancer, I post a picture of me with no hair going through chemo, or people message me, DM me, and they're like, oh my God, thank you. I haven't been able to say anything. I wanted to share, but I can't. People telling me to change my profile picture to short hair compared to long hair after chemo, after I talked to you. And I was like, yes,
Yeah.
that's the whole point of, impressions, it doesn't matter. None of that matters. It's like, yeah, our story, our experiences, our showing up and taking up space gives permission for other women to do the same thing. And
Absolutely.
and it's just our courage. And think you feed off each other, right? Because I see you do something brave and it makes me braver the next time I post content. And then, and then I see someone else do something brave and I'm like, yes, I can be braver too. And we just, all of us just raise what's the word? What's the expression? The tides, the raising
The
tide with
rising
all this.
tides lift all boats.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm like,
Yeah.
what's the expression? But I think it's just because that's why I love when I watch you promoting a cohort. And I want you to talk about that. whatever you have coming up at the end. But it's like, oh my God, the more brave women who are showing up authentic, showing up, living aligned to their values, it just makes everywhere safer and brighter. And I don't know. I love it. I just love what you do. So what do you think it means to grow a business that aligned to your values?
I mean, I think that really at its core, it's about building something that you feel deeply proud of, right? Because I think that there are a lot of businesses out there that, and we're all familiar, right, with the big empires that exist, that they're just to make money, right? And there's nothing wrong with that. We all, well, there might be, but like, there's nothing wrong with wanting to make money. We all want to make as much money as possible. But I think that when you are building a business that is really coming from your values and is driven by deep purpose and the impact that you can make, and you know that you can help people because you have unique gifts that no one else has, and you're able to help people in this particular way. I think that it just creates this beautiful sense of pride, and it helps you ride those waves, right? Because business is up and down. It's not smooth sailing there. And that's part of the scary part of entrepreneurship. It's not smooth sailing. You will have hard times in your business, guaranteed.
Yeah,
You will.
guaranteed.
And I don't wish that on anyone, but you will. You will have those times, and that's going to look different for different people, obviously. It
Yeah.
doesn't look the same for everyone, but whatever it might be, when you hit those hard times, when you're able to take a step back and say, like, this is why I'm doing this. I know why I'm doing this, and it's worth it. Kind of what you were saying, where you post and there's no the impressions don't matter. It's those messages that you get. And that's really the case, I think, in business too. You're going to have seasons where, you're not bringing in as many clients, you're not bringing in as much business, and that's going to happen. But the ones that you are helping and who tell you, like, you use your particular gifts to help me in this way, I just think it helps you ride those waves, and it keeps you
Uh,
going for the long haul.
100%. Yeah, it's mostly hard, right? And it's like, I don't know, it seems very masochistic to do that. It's like you have to know why you're doing what you're doing. And in terms of values, I'll just say this and then we'll go to our last question, but it's like I always imagine my mom over my shoulder. I don't know about you. I come from a very religious background, and I always imagine like or like, okay, what is this going to come if there's anything that's going to come back later and bite me in the ass or embarrass my kids, or if there's anything to try to live with that level of integrity that's going to make your mom happy, not that you're living for make your mom happy, but you're living aligned into a certain standard, right? And I agree, it can be so tempting as a entrepreneur to cut those corners and to kind of move outside of what we know is right for us. And I'm not saying anything illegal, obviously nothing like that,
Yeah.
but yeah, go for it, break the law. But it's ultimately, it's just, I always find that anytime I move outside of what I know what my values are, it's just, there's emotional pain there. And it's just, after a while, you just become so uncomfortable with the consequences of you doing that, that like, you just won't. You'll see that client who shows up with $20,000 to spend and you're like, I'm going to pass. I'm going to pass. I remember
I
we got yeah, go for it.
had I think it was in my first year of business, I had someone, maybe it was my second year of business. I don't even know. The years are blurring at this point, but fairly early on, I had a client who I took on during a period of time that, was a really tough time in my business, and I wasn't sure if I was going to keep going, and that's probably around when you and I met, and I took on this client. I totally went against my values. I totally just, because you're going to sometimes. Like, I don't want it to sound I always choose that path. Sometimes you choose the path that's going to pay your bills, right? And I very much had that feeling in the pit of my stomach where I'm like, this is wrong. This is not going to be right. I know this isn't going to be right. And I took it on anyway. And I wound up, I did the work and I presented it to the client, and all of my worries were correct.
Mm,
And I wound up giving them their money back, or not
yeah.
all of it, but I gave most of their money back, because I was just, this is not right. I don't even want to fix this, because this is just not, it's not aligned. This is not going in line with my values. And I think that when we make decisions in our business or in our lives or whatever that go against what we hold to be really, it's that I always say it's in the pit of your stomach. You
Yeah.
you feel it, and it's that inner knowing that I actually really do think that women have more than men. We just have this innate inner knowing, and when we ignore it, it's not going to lead anywhere good, and you're going to feel that too.
Yeah, it's that trusting yourself. I think that's the thing that I've learned now after 20 plus years as an entrepreneur is it's not worth it to trust yourself. That's the hardest thing. And I feel like I'm starting to get a little emotional now, but it's that trusting yourself where I don't know, we had a really slow Q1 this year, 2026. We had a really slow Q1 and we had this old client come back and be like, hey, I want to build a second website. And it could have been a 5-figure project. And my ops manager was, oh my God, this is amazing. And she's a nightmare to work with. No, no, no. She's like, but it's like this much money. No, not worth it. I would rather go bankrupt than deal with that shit. It's just like he's so misaligned. Do you know what I mean? Like changing who I am and fighting her with pricing and all this stuff. But I think that trusting yourself is the hardest thing about being an entrepreneur because then you have to trust, I'm saying no to this because
Right.
something better is coming and holding that space to have that faith. I mean, that's a totally different conversation, but it's the whole game is faith, the whole game. And I'm not talking about religious faith. I'm talking about faith in being supported
Yeah.
towards your vision and
Yeah.
knowing that your values, you can build a successful business living aligned to your values. And I love that. And anyway, so Rachel, I know you've got another call to be on. So where can people find you? Tell us about you, what you've got coming up and how people can get connected with you.
Yeah, thank you. So my website is honeybeebold.com, HoneyBeebold. Sometimes people add an extra E,
Honeybee?
but it's an imperative, be bold.
Yeah, be well.
So that's my website. You can find me on LinkedIn, on Instagram. I actually am more active on Instagram these days than LinkedIn. I'm just finding it
Nice.
more fun at the moment. And like, that's a big part of what do the thing that feels fun because you're not going to keep it up if it doesn't feel fun. So
It's not.
that's kind of the main ways to find me. I have a podcast of my own. Natasha was actually on my podcast,
Yes,
and you should link to the episode because it was so good.
I will.
I would just have to give this little quip because I invited Natasha on my podcast. I think it was the first season of my podcast. It's called Bold Women in Business, and I'm now in my 4th season, so it's been a while. But I had this whole topic planned, and Natasha comes on and says, "So I was diagnosed with breast cancer 2 weeks ago," and I was like, "Do you want to talk about it? Let's talk about it." And we did. We just talked about it live. She's live processing. It was so powerful, and
Wow,
it's really kind of what we're talking about here. Just leaning
totally.
in and being yourself, and it was so
Yeah.
powerful. So
I think you were my first business friend I talked to about it. And I was
yeah,
just, oh my God. Yeah, I think it was even less than 2 weeks. It was something really
yeah,
close. I just gotten diagnosed. But yeah, so tell us about your cohort and then so what's coming
yeah.
up? What's that about? Who's that a good fit for?
Yeah, so I am currently running a cohort. So this one is closed, but I'll be running another one in October. It's called the Bold Content Collective. It's a 6-week cohort where it's part there is a curriculum, but it's also part coaching and co-creation and just building up your content strategy and brand strategy and all the foundational pieces that then give you a plan that you can actually keep up. And the whole point of it is everything we're talking about here, building it to who you are at your core and what feels good to you and what you're actually going to be able to keep up because that's going to be different for every person. So I'm going to be running one in October will be the next one. So you can just find it at honeybeebold.com/BCC.
I love it.
And it's really perfect for female founders who've been struggling with their content, who've been struggling to really define the magic that they offer, which is something I see a lot is just even putting words to that and
Excellent.
defining all those pieces. So yeah, super, super
I love it.
helpful for the people who've gone through it so far. And I would love to have some of your listeners in the next
I
cohort.
love it. Oh my God. Yes, exactly. So if you are not connected with Rachel, you are missing out. Your life is not complete. So head over to Instagram or LinkedIn and connect with Rachel there. Rachel, thank you so much. You are an inspiration to me. You are such a bright, shiny light, and you make my life so much better. And just thank you so much for being on the call today.
Thank you. I feel the same about you.